2020 was awful. It's hard to look back on it and pick out moments that felt more positive than negative. It's safe to say that most people's lives changed pretty drastically. I started out the year by getting ready to go study a postgrad degree. I just finished my bachelor's in 2019, so for about 6 months, I just bided my time and worked my night job. What I wanted to study was related to my bachelor's, but it was in the health field instead of the creative industries. In the months leading up to it, I was pretty certain that that was the direction I wanted to go in. But I've always had a bad habit of just doing the bare minimum and thinking that that was enough to get by in life. Whatever it was, work, study, whatever. I was that kid in school that missed like 2 days a week and still got really good grades. At this point, it probably goes without saying that that's not how things work when you're an adult. So 2020 comes around, and I start studying in late February, and about a week into it, I realize I'm so far behind. I'm learning first aid and getting injections and doing all the state-required online training to do placements in hospitals and things like that. And the uni had made it very clear that I was supposed to have all of that done before I even studied classes. I knew that. But of course, there I was thinking that I could get it all done in the last few days. I played myself. By the beginning of the third week and around mid-March, COVID restrictions and panic were gradually growing where I live. I had a placement coming up and I was still trying to get these requirements done. For context, if I didn't get them done, then I couldn't do the placement. And without that, I couldn't actually pass the semester. Then I would have to wait until the next year to give it another go. So by the end of the week, I dropped out because I ran out of time. The small saving grace was that I no longer had to be outside so much at a time when it was best to stay isolated. My job was also changing, and for a few weeks I really thought I was about to lose it. Without the prospect of going back to study and sort of solidify a career for myself, I felt really lost. I didn't know what to do or what I wanted to do. After panicking for a few weeks, I figured I couldn't really ask more or less of myself than to just take a moment to stop and actually plan my next step. After all, not planning was what brought me to that point. And to be honest, I don't yet feel like I've made that much progress in what I want, but I know that I'm at least a little bit closer than I was this time last year. So with that in mind, I wanted to share some things that were in my life last year that really helped me out when I needed it. And to start off, say hello to this guy. This is Tim Henson, and he is the front man for a band called Polyphia. People call them a prog band, a math rock band, formerly a metal band, but honestly, I don't know how I describe them. It's like they sit in a room and pull 2 or 3 genres out of a hat and say, yeah, let's do these next. I came across them at the end of 2019, but through 2020, I listened to more and more of their music. I've been playing instruments for about 9 years, and when I was still young, maybe too young, I decided I really want to pursue a career in which a huge part of it involves making or working with music. But throughout those years, I've hit a few substantial mental blocks, and I felt like maybe I don't have what it takes to make that sort of career work. It takes a lot of dedication and practice and, funnily enough, creativity. In hindsight, this probably makes my decision to go into the health field a little sad, as if it were some safe backup in case my first plan never worked. I was all about learning music for the first couple of years. I practiced like the dickens. I woke up hours early to practice. I went to sleep late to practice. But eventually I plateaued and very egotistically believed that I was good enough to get by. I wasn't. I really struggled putting into words just how much making music means to me. And feeling uninspired and like I can't make good music is a real gut punch of a feeling, which then in turn made it hard for me to even listen to music. I think there was a period where I didn't learn anything or listen to anything new for about 6 months. But when I started listening to Polyphia, suddenly I felt really different. All I wanted to do was soak it in and listen to their music for days. At my night job, I'd listen to New Levels, New Devils on repeat for almost my entire shift. 8 hours on repeat. They were smashing together these sounds I'd never heard together before. It wasn't even about wanting to suddenly start making music again because of them. I just wanted to listen. Just listen. And already that was such a huge difference for me. The music I've made in the past year has been hugely inspired by these guys. Not in like a copycat way, but in a feeling the liberty to put together whatever sounds right kind of way, which is a big part of what music is, and I think I forgot that somewhere along the way. I can only hope that one day someone listens to my music and feels the same way about it that I feel about Polyphia's. Thank you, Polyphia. And please go listen to Polyphia. I'm going to take these bad boys off. Actually, the way that I feel about music is very similar to the way I feel about video games. I'd even say that well before I ever tried my hand at music, I was already in love with games in a way that nothing at that point could compare to. I wasn't a very sociable kid, and my family never really had that much money. So I couldn't afford to do anything outside of school, like in the way that some kids pick up sports and things like that. But like with music, as I've gotten older, I feel like I've gotten more stagnant with games. I have so many that I haven't started or finished yet that I don't know what to play. So I end up sinking a few hours in Quick Play and Ultimate or something. Even so, they're a big part of my life. And certainly the game that directly impacted me the most last year was a little game, you may have heard of it, called Final Fantasy VII Remake. This game. Also mid-game spoilers, by the way, so if you haven't played it yet and you do want to, then I will include a timestamp so that you can skip this part. I don't have that much experience with the Final Fantasy series. I played some of 12 and a ton of the first Dissidia demo on the PSP, and that's about it. And before I go on, I know that this game is very different stylistically to the ones that came before it. Late March last year, I kept seeing promos for this game everywhere. And so fresh from dropping out and feeling really low and unsure of what to do with myself, I downloaded the demo. And that was pretty damn great. I really liked what I'd seen, and I loved the music that was in that game's trailers. So I decided to treat myself and I bought it. I entered expecting a really good game and left with an incredible experience and a revitalized feeling of wanting to play games. This isn't a review, by the way, or a critique or anything like that. Like, the game isn't perfect. There's plenty of things about it that feel like a chore. These stupid gym minigames, the fact that you can't dash attack just to break a box, and damn are there a lot of boxes. But for every negative that I ran into, I felt like I was enjoying a hell of a lot more positives. There were so many moments playing this game where I felt like my heart was getting lighter. I can't really explain it another way. I was genuinely lost in this game. It got to the point that whenever I had to stop playing it, I didn't want to boot it up again because I didn't want the game to end. Incidentally, I think one of the reasons I struggle so much to just play games is because I like story-driven ones, and when the story's over, it usually feels like there's a big hole left. But I think the real turning point came from the scene that's about 2/3 into the game. Cloud is resting at Aerith's house with the rest of Avalanche after Aerith gets captured. He has this dream where he meets her in a garden outside, and they talk and bear a lot of their feelings towards one another. And at a certain point, Aerith says this one line that just made me stop for a minute.
Everyone dies eventually.
I suppose.
So we need to make the most of the time we have. To live our lives the way we want to live. Every minute, every moment matters.
I'll remember that.
That was probably the moment that I really fell in love with this game. And you know, it could just be a cliche emotional line that the writers scrapped together. There's probably a million other games out there that say the same sort of thing. And in reality, life doesn't always feel as simple as appreciating the moment as it comes. You know, things can very easily get in the way of that. But in that moment, when I heard it, it meant a lot. I don't think a day's gone by since that I haven't thought of that game. Before I played 7 Remake, I owned exactly 3 Final Fantasy games. And now I have 12 of them and the start of a pretty snazzy item collection. So congratulations, Square Enix, you won! Also, I just found out that that scene with Aerith can be replaced by a scene with Barret or a scene with Tifa depending on the decisions you made along the way. I really like that. Moving on, probably the most obvious thing that helped me out last year was my family. I've always relied on their support and advice, but that only increased as last year went by. Originally, I wasn't going to include this part about them. I thought I was getting too personal, but you know what? They mean a lot to me, and I'm happy to share that. My siblings and I have always been very close. And last year, one of them finished their master's degree while working the equivalent of a full-time job, and another 2 of them came out, one of whom is much younger than me, and the other who at the same time lost their job and had a pretty bad beat trying to find a new one. Don't worry, they have now. The common thread between them, though, is they all showed off what I think is incredible perseverance. Life on any normal day doesn't give you anything for free. Unless you were born rich, which we weren't, so that's out of the window. So you want to make progress in your life? You gotta fight for it. You want a better job? Fight for it. Want people to see you in a new light? Fight for it. And it's never as easy as you wish. They showed me this relentless grind of moving one step closer to where they wanted to be, who they wanted to be. And that was motivating because, like I said, for a hot minute there, I had no idea what I was doing. Seeing them piece that together on top of dealing with the mounting pressure of a global health crisis that was completely new to all of us, that really helped. It made me feel like if they can make progress, then so can I. And in the same way that I believed in them, they'd believe in me. Also, shout out to my mom. She's incredible. Single mother of 4, immigrant from the other side of the world, living in a country she barely knew existed before she arrived. She's still done everything she could for us. And I reckon she's the reason that any of us are as decent as we are in the first place. I'm gonna go give her a hug when I'm done here. Well, maybe not right now because it's like 1 a.m. Next up, a book I should probably finish before I try talking about it. Atomic Habits by a James Clear. I remember first stumbling across this book through the kit.co page of the Melee Player 11. For some reason, I was drawn to it. I have a real tendency to judge books by their covers, and the cover of this book is just so aesthetically pleasing to me. Of course, the topics that it covers are the real selling points. Let me give you an umbrella pitch for this book. Atomic Habits puts forward the notion that life success, in whatever form you want it to be, is based not on setting incredibly large and legacy-defining goals, but instead on developing habit-based systems and refining the smaller details that make up those goals. In doing so, you grow the discipline to focus on the actions that define those goals, rather than just the goals themselves. As Tim Henson said, yes, that Tim Henson, in a really cool interview for AAPI Musicians recently, focus on the process and less about the outcome. It's an idea that feels so painfully obvious, and it's something you've probably done a million times in your life. But as you start to set your own life goals, like maybe you want to hit and maintain your ideal weight by the end of the year, or you want to have your dream job in 5 years, or your dream house in 10 years, you get bogged down with the pressure of achieving these goals within these completely arbitrary deadlines. Don't get me wrong, deadlines can be good for you, but you do that instead of building the systems that maintain progress towards those goals for you. Maybe you don't, but I guess that's why this video isn't going to be called Things That Helped You Out This Past Year. In the first half of the book, the author touches upon the point that people that see success usually have the same goals as people that don't see success. Take, for example, runners in a race. All the runners want to win the race. It isn't like the runner that wins had a completely different goal in mind. So if you're finding that you continuously run into failure, and every time you try to achieve something you hit a dead end, don't worry. Your goals are probably in the right place. You might just benefit from refining the process that you're using to reach them. And if you can relate to that sort of feeling, then maybe you can look into getting this book. I don't think you'd regret it. Anyway, like I said, I haven't actually finished it yet, so I should probably stop preaching about it, but it definitely has helped me out a lot lately. That's kind of it, I suppose. You may have noticed that there's like a general theme of perseverance that runs through these things, right? Like the idea of really wanting to find the right way to accomplish something that you want to do. And even further than that, just finding the right way to be yourself and live the way that's ideal for you. Sometimes it's not so easy to tell what you're supposed to be doing, you know? I suppose you just gotta trust your gut and do what feels right. Anyway, I got some honorable mentions. 2 of my friends have made some real strides in their personal goals recently. One of them that I've known since we were 13, he was streaming on Mixer when that went belly up all of a sudden. But now he's well and truly nested himself on Twitch, and he's on there like every day. He could probably go about it in a more efficient way, but it's cool. He's just doing it for himself. Streaming seems like something you could very easily lose motivation doing, especially if you don't see growth in it. But he's been on pretty much every day for the past 9 months, just doing what he feels like. I even joined him once while he was playing games that I bought him for his birthday. I think that's all dope. More power to him. His friendship obviously means a lot to me, and seeing him go out there and give something a go, I really love that. You can have a look at his stuff at twitch.tv/SeanHub_live. Tell him I said hi. Another friend of mine who goes by Amity has been making pretty steady progress in his music lately. And he had a show to celebrate the release of his debut album pretty much at the tail end of the first wave of lockdown here in Queensland. Which is really unfortunate timing, but his hands were kind of tied. There wasn't much he could do when most of the accommodating venues were more or less still shut down. All that being said, he blew it out of the water. And the gig actually sold out. The place was packed. Responsibly packed. I manned the merchandise table and he had shirts selling like hotcakes. Here's some right now. Of course, when you put that next to the money he put in to bring this album to existence, it's still a net loss, but that's not what it's about. I mean, that's almost expected at the beginning of most musicians' careers. Remember that Tim Henson interview I mentioned? In it, Tim says it was a good 5 years of full-time touring before he started making money from it. I've known this guy since we met in uni 6 years ago, and there's nothing he's dedicated himself to more than becoming a better performer and a better musician. To see the culmination of all of that passion and effort come into its first really big highlight last year, it reaffirmed to me that there is no substitute to raw practice and investment. If you want something, you have to try your hardest to get it. Let's revisit Final Fantasy VII for a minute. You know what that game's carried by? The soundtrack. Oh my god. There must be something in the water in Japan, because they got this dude, Nobuo Uematsu, who composed that soundtrack. They also got this dude, and this dude, and this dude. This is Shoji Meguro, arguably my favorite video game music composer. You may know him for his work on games from the publisher Atlus, namely the Persona series. This guy is something else. Since playing Persona 4 and Persona 5, this guy has been like a god to me. I'll Face Myself, Nevermore, Aria of the Soul, Willpower, Alley Cat, Last Surprise, Colors Flying High. The sheer amount of musicality that this guy displays in even a handful of his tracks is astounding. If you haven't listened to those soundtracks, I really recommend them. The games are dope too. Now that's kinda it. There's a part of me that's pretty certain that nobody will ever see this video. Not because I won't release it, because I've already promised myself that I will, but because the internet is huge and largely indifferent, and this will probably just be washed away with the daily online traffic. And I'm kind of okay with that. Even if no one ever sees this, I'm glad I made it. Not only did it give me a chance to reflect on this past year and the things in my life that helped me out, but it gave me even just a little more experience in video editing, which is something I really want to improve on right now. And I would rather get this out there and feel some resolution alone than not release it and never know where it could have gone.